Welcome and hello. Welcome to the 31st event in the Public Thought Leadership event series hosted by the library. Western Sydney University was placed first in the world 4 times running in the Times Higher Education Index, the only global performance measure that assesses universities against United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And this event series aims to celebrate and promote this number one ranking, complementing work being undertaken across the university as part of its Sustainability and Resilience Decadal Strategy 2030. I will now hand over to my colleague Badru Chandran, who will introduce today's speakers.
Thank you, Emma. And again, good afternoon and welcome to the Thought Leadership Event Series number 31, Climate Justice Through Reuse and Repair. And as you know, that Western Sydney University's Thought Leadership Series highlights groundbreaking research aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. As the number one university globally in the Times Higher Education University Impact Rankings, we are proud to champion research that delivers real-world impact. This series forms a vital part of our Sustainability and Resilience Decadal Strategy 2030. Today's panel explores how we can foster climate awareness and empower us to become active participants in climate justice. We are honored to welcome Associate Professor Stephen Healy from Western Sydney University as our chair for this panel. With expertise in political economy, community economies, and climate justice, Stephen will introduce the panel and guide a rich and thought-provoking discussion on innovative approaches to climate education and student engagement. Welcome, Stephen, and over to you.
Thank you very much for the warm welcome. Is this on?
No,
It is not on. Let me see if I can rectify that. Wait.
It's just the button at the bottom. It's really tiny. It's like a tiny red dot.
That's friendly for people in the mid-50s. I'm going to use a pen to turn this on. There we go. How about now? No? One more time.
There you go.
I think that's done it. No? Yes? No? There we go. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to those of you who are online. Just for your benefit, we're meeting here with about 50 people who are sitting in seats. And we don't have a whole lot of time for this thought leadership event, so I think I'll just launch right into it. Thanks for the warm welcome and the organizational efforts of the Thought Leadership Series. I participated in it in its inception year. It's a really great initiative. And myself and Allison Gill, as part of the Urban Futures Research Cluster at the Institute for Culture and Society, have played a role in organizing this event as well in partnership with the library and with Jenna and her colleagues who are here. So I'm just going to introduce them in the order that they're sitting adjacent to me. Rob Morrison is a program leader, sustainability and waste for Blue Mountain City Council program leader. He is passionate about delivering sustainability and circularity initiatives with tangible community benefits, focusing on practical implementation. Rob leads projects that improve circularity, reduce climate impact, and build resilience across the Blue Mountains region. Jenna, Dr. Jenna Condie is a social researcher at Western Sydney University and a community organizer in the Blue Mountains. Alongside parents, students, and grassroots groups, she is building caring communities, from childcare collectives to swap and reuse initiatives in pursuit of social and climate justice. And then lastly, Nic Seton is the CEO of Parents for Climate, Australia's leading climate advocacy organization for parents and carers. Since 2021, Nic has led the organization through court battles and clean energy policy wins in collaboration with a national network of over 25,000 mums, dads, grandparents, and carers committed to securing a safer climate for kids to thrive. Okay, so let's just start off, and I think I might, there's a next slide, yeah. I guess I'm in charge of the slides too. I'll do that. That's fine. See if that works. Yeah, we've got all the questions. There's 4 of them, and we've got about 40 minutes, and then we'll go to Q&A. So we'll just start off with the question number 1. What is your current work project role, and how does it connect with reuse and repair and climate action? So this is an invitation to elaborate. And I think I might throw to Jenna first, and then we'll rotate the batting order. Sorry to go American there with the metaphors for a moment. There we go.
Thanks, Stephen. Hi, everyone. As Stephen mentioned there, I'm a researcher that's focused on how we organise well at times of intersecting crises. We've got the climate crisis, we've got economic injustices, social and institutional harms. How do we hold all that together and build community? So my work is really grounded in my own activism, and it started in the climate space, becoming a parent and with other mums building a community support network to learn how to use modern cloth nappies. And they need all this new knowledge because they're new. And so we were helping each other build that. And there were some really important lessons there that came through then into trying to activate parent climate communities in the Blue Mountains where I live. And then leveraging the network of Parents for Climate, trying to activate our local group, we started a kids clothes and toy swap in November 2022. And that's the thread really, I think, and why the panel sort of comes together. And the toy swap is organised by the local group of Parents for Climate in the Blue Mountains. It's a case study for Council's Community Net Zero plan. We won a BIMfluencer award, which we're very proud of, and it's very reinforcing. We're keeping on going with our swap. We just, on the weekend, did our 13th kids clothes and toy swap. We do that every quarter, and we just consistently show up, and we've got a really high level of engagement now with 87 families participated on the weekend, and we weigh everything in, and we redistributed and are still redistributing because there's a lot of stuff. 382 kilograms of kids' clothes and toys and other essential items like prams, high chairs, all sorts of stuff. And look, it's really, really rewarding work, and it's now becoming, a part of my research. We just did a campus swap with students, a student staff coalition. Many of them are here today, and that was really successful at a time when people are really feeling some of the institutional and other reword restructures. And students are wanting to connect and need mutual aid, around like the cost of living, economic inequality, and we did a clothes and resources swap, and it was really important. But I think the framing for climate justice is really key for me because it makes what we're doing matter more, to be really thinking about the spaces that we're creating and how we're organising and who gets included and who's not, and what kinds of values and practices we're underpinning our activities with. And climate justice is really, really key as an organising framework and a set of practices that we can engage with to make sure that we're acting in a fair, just and equitable way, and that we're addressing the root causes of the climate crisis and social injustice. I went on a bit. There you go.
That was great, Jenna. Thank you. Actually, if I could get you to pass the mic to Rob.
Yep. So I think at council, I'm going to talk about we a lot because I'm talking about broadly across council, and also particular flag out to Joe and Erin in the room today who do a lot of the work on the projects I'll be talking about. But we're trying to normalise reuse and repair as far as possible. And I think one thing we've got to acknowledge is our libraries. Like, they're a really effective reuse network that exists. People use it. This isn't some new sort of hippie thing. Everyone's using it. We've got 37% of our residents are members. We recite over 500,000 books annually. So we really try and leverage that network. So we get into the library, we run workshops during school holidays on waste education and craft. We do textile weaving. So we had the Sustainability Festival and we had a textile weaving workshop at the libraries. And we've also tried to get in there with an energy efficiency kit. So residents ask for this and they want access to thermal imaging cameras to help them improve energy efficiency at home. So we put those into our libraries, reusing that existing network. We also have 2 waste facilities. we have reuse sheds at those waste facilities. We divert about 40 tons of material from landfill through those each year. And we're currently working up a proposal for a circular economy hub on one of our old landfill sites, looking at tool sheds, repair cafes, but also reprocessing as a way to potentially fund some of those initiatives. We also have developed a range of workshops in this space. So we've got Reimagine Waste that's run through the Planetary Health Initiative, first Saturday of every month. We also were successful recently, and this is one of our kind of exciting projects, or they all are, but we got a grant from the EPA through Waste Solutions Fund to work with our markets and events to make them 100% reusable, so reusable cups and cutlery plates. And so we're really partnering there to work out what will work. And we're also actively trying to engage with our community, working with and promoting kind of what is happening in terms of swaps with Parents for Climate Action, but also our sustainability festival, which is, again, very much community run, and we try to support and promote that. They've embedded repair and reuse into the kind of foundations of that event. Sorry, I forgot my notes, so I'm going a little bit off topic, but the final one, I'll just go into repair as well. We've developed a repair network. So we run repair workshops, really trying to upskill and provide the skills to the community to fix clothing, toys particularly. We've also run a bike workshop where people could come get their bike maintained and tuned up. And we have developed a directory. So we're trying to understand what's happening in the community, pull out all the repairs that are there, whether they're backyard or businesses, have them in one spot. So if community wants something fixed, they can go and have a look there and see who's doing that locally. I'll probably stop there.
For extemporaneous speech, that was very comprehensive. Thank you. Nic, please.
Thank you. And thanks all. I'm just in awe, like the impact of this is really exciting. To give you a sense of why I was really excited to jump on this panel is because my current work is all about advocacy at state, federal and local levels. And last week, for example, I was in Canberra and I was advocating on behalf of my organisation with the federal government on its 2035 climate targets. And that feels like a really big intractable problem sometimes, but it absolutely connects to reuse and repair, because what we've discovered and what we've learned, thanks to Jenna and her team, is that reuse and repair isn't just something that, has meaning in families' homes and connects to two out of three voters are parents. So there's all of these people out there who are asking, what do I do with all this stuff? And they're so frustrated about waste. And they're dealing with the costs of things and just the, inevitable kind of fast fashion that comes with having kids these days. And we've realized that it's not just a value point, it's an organizing principle. It's really exciting because it actually creates grassroots power, which can send someone like me into Parliament so that I'm there right after the BCA and I can say, actually, no, you have another stakeholder that you need to listen to. So this is why I think it's really critically exciting. I mean, personally, obsessed with reuse and repair, but as a systems change potential, I'm just absolutely gobsmacked with how these initiatives can scale up, how they can happen everywhere, how everyone can participate and how it can address the tear in our social fabric, not just when it comes to waste and the cost and the social inequality, but also social division and isolation and rebuilding that community, putting people back into these conversations. So yeah, I'm super excited to be in this one.
Well, we're off to an impressive start. All right, we're going to move on to question 2. How can researchers, councils, and communities collaborate and extend impact? And this might be an invitation to really think about what you need to do this work better. So maybe you guys are going to share things that you haven't gotten to say out loud to one another. Who knows? So why don't we start with Rob?
So I think this is an area that Blue Mountains Council has kind of put a lot of effort to trying to improve. I think kind of in the linear economy, as a council, it's easy just to provide a service and educate. You don't necessarily have to collaborate, but as soon as you go to that circular model or climate action, it just doesn't work. You don't even scrape the surface. So with the development of our community towards net zero plan, we really to take a step change in our approach. We're trying to embed in the community, understand what is happening, what people are already doing, and also what isn't happening that needs to happen, and trying to give some sort of coordination and kind of direction. There's probably a couple of good examples here, and one Jenna's already kind of touched on. So we do transport clothes swaps. I think there was a community assistance program grant that went to support the clothes swaps, and we also provide kind of workshops alongside. So I think a recent example where it's worked well, we've been trying to get reusable nappies. We're trying to promote them and get them more widely used in the community. We've really struggled to get traction, and we had Joe go along to the clothes swap at the weekend, and the nappies, any reusable nappies coming in, were kind of directed over to Joe. She could then promote, show how they work, and then get them turned out to the next families. Just a really good kind of collaboration that works for both parties. And then probably another model is where we've more identified a need, and that's the reusable cups at events. So it's quite a complex problem with multiple stakeholders. It's probably not something their volunteer group's going to manage themselves. So we've got Erin actually going out to the markets, working with the vendor, working with the organizer, working with packaging providers, working with the community to understand and message and sell. So I think it's kind of two good examples of different approaches we've taken. And I will say probably on the research front, we've struggled. We've not made it work yet. I would love to see us make it work better, because I think there's a lot of knowledge there, but sometimes, I don't know, we've just never found a way to make it work.
Fantastic. Why don't you hand the mic to Nic? And
So I think with our researchers, we can't really measure things very easily. We do our best as a grassroots organization with limited resources, but there's so much to measure, and not just in terms of participation, although that's something we can find quick and easy ways to measure. We're also noticing in the quality of participation a significant diversity, like social diversity, political diversity, and so on, in where closed books, toy swaps are being practiced across the country by parent groups. That's really exciting, because that really, in today's kind of politics, it actually opens a lot of opportunity to have conversations and bring people together around agendas that otherwise might not get to meet. But the one area that I'm really interested in is looking at the sort of systems change. I'm really excited about the supply chain stuff, but also what does it mean in the context of a changing climate? We really need to think about the full iceberg, if you like, in a systems change picture. Like what are the mindsets that are going to be needed in order to be resilient, in order to have strong community, and in order to be able to think about what objects mean beyond their, use by date. What do they mean in terms of potential for the community to be able to not just maintain its own finances and keep money locally, but like potentially the job creation value and so on. What about the civic engagement? What about the way in which bringing people together in this conversation, everyone can participate and renew and repair, whether that's virtually or in person? What does that mean for people's potential to be able to support those things and initiatives towards that? There's some fantastic research that's just come out of Potential Energy, which is an agency in the US that does climate change communications research. And they have tested climate conversations that are based on preparation against a control trial. And they've found that when you have conversations about how are you going to prepare for a changing climate, not only does support for the transition go up, but support for things like, phase out of fossil fuels drastically increases by many points against control groups, because people are making it personal, they're making it real, they're making it tangible, they're thinking about the objects in front of them as well as their families and communities. And that lastly is the thing that I'm most desperate to measure, is that climate readiness. How can we actually look at community connection and actually that, it can't be measured in growth terms, but that resilience that comes with having communities that know where to go to get something fixed, that know how to offer their skills and they know how to participate in local economy around these concepts, because that's going to be so important. If a town gets hit, I don't know if you were listening to Radio National this morning, they have that Changemaker series. There was just coincidentally a chap from, is it Waddell, the town just south of Lismore that got totally flooded. And he was on the radio just telling the community about how they created their own local resilience hub with an 800 strong population to be able to look after themselves in those moments when, let's be honest, when the going gets tough, you're on your own. The government's not going to come in and solve the problem for you. You've got to have your local community, and that's what I think this is going to be able to do through researchers and local council and then community activity.
Jenna, lucky last.
Just reminding myself of the question. Yeah, I think there's a few things really as somebody who's like sat here as a community organizer, activist, researcher, working in with councils through a climate organization, and just that we can do this, we can collaborate, we can get to a point where we're on a panel together having a conversation. I might take the opportunity to ask Rob if we can be a pilot for a case for the event kit for the reusable cups because we're partnering with a church to do our swaps, and in one room we are doing we're doing all our work to reuse clothing and toys, and in the other room there's quite a lot of waste being generated through the refreshments, and they're helping us outright by we don't have enough capacity to do that. But then there's a real potential actually there to work with another organisation through us, the church, and they're really important for climate action as well, to just be building all of these really meaningful partnerships and relationships that we can actually push through together, because the climate crisis is now. And, like you were saying, if we're going to be organising, we've got this swap going on and we come together and we look at all the waste, and we're trying to reuse that and help people and support people. And when somebody actually said on Saturday, after quite a full-on conversation about climate, that at the end of the day, all we have is community. And so this is really, really important as a site for people to come together and support one another without any cost, it's a free event and it's really helping people. And that's why we keep doing it. And now we've got the university swap going, which provides another context for research to really think about what we need to do to collaborate across universities, councils, and different community groups. And when we did the swap on campus, we had so many more people involved. There's a lot of resources within universities, and we keep thinking about repurposing the university and leveraging the resources that we've got access to towards, climate active communities and supporting people with community care. And on Saturday in the Blue Mountain Swap, students came to support us. And I think I'm looking right at Thomas there. He was on the registration check-in desk doing an amazing job and making such an amazing contribution to our work. And the volunteers, we're now 5 actually. I was actually saying last week that the swap felt fragile and our one in the mountains felt a bit more fragile than the university one. Then someone else pops up saying, I want to be part of your core team. And then the students came along and I'm like, actually, we're all right, we can keep going with this. But that labour, the invisible labour that goes behind and drives a lot of these community initiatives is what we can do together, I think, to extend the impact and keep going and look at how we can all build a network around this and actually acknowledge all the labour and the care that goes into it and make the most of it. And as research sites, the swaps are really great. There's so much possibilities. We're trying to capture how people are interpreting what they're doing and how it relates to the climate. And we've got loads of questions around that we're trying to answer through the swap. So it would be great to try and level that up really. And I think, across climate groups, councils and universities.
Great. Our panelists are being very disciplined. We've got 15 minutes left for Q&A and 2 questions. Just wanted to note in passing as Allison and I were at an event that Matt Kearns organized, who's in the back of the room, and there were representatives from Northern Beaches Council who are already doing that reuse cup thing alongside their boot sales and other reuse and repair events. So it seems like one thing that universities could do is play a role of connecting already existing experiments and learning from them and then sharing the results. Reuse the university. That could be a nice tagline rather than restructure. Okay. Question 3. What does an effective post-election climate politics look like from the ground up? So when we were thinking about this event, it was right after the federal elections. That was sort of what prompted this question. But are we in a new environment? What can we do now that we couldn't have done, say, 5 years ago politically? Oh, Nick, yes, please.
Sure. I guess I gave you a taste of how I see things. Grassroots communities can affect, top level advocacy. We're talking about hosting a UN climate talks here down in Adelaide next year, potentially, if the government gets their act together and convinces the Pacific that they're genuine and good faith. And I think that, bottom up is possibly the only way. I'm going to be honest. Policy keeps changing. And our analysis of what we're experiencing at the moment when we're trying to deal with federal government is that power is very tightly managed. Even inside Parliament, there are a lot of parliamentarians who are just like, I've got this much room to move. And they're all trying to move by that much. And so we're hoping that we can, influence each one of them, if you like, in a kind of log jam. And if we can move each one of them that little bit, and we can move the mass. But that requires bottom-up power, because you need to be in every single constituency to be able to do that. And so, yes, having 25 chapter groups in Parents for Climate is a good start. We're able to, put a bit of pressure on, especially at the moment. If you've got a Labor government that has such a thin but broad majority, we can do a lot with that. So I'd say that right now, bringing it back to reuse and repair, it's just turning these into active conversations and communities that will inevitably be the fabric that holds this together and can affect political change, because our mindsets and expectations can shift no matter what your level of engagement.
Shall I go?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Been thinking a lot about this question and just doing some reflections really, because I think with our swaps, we're not hiding that we're a climate action group. We have signs up that say no more coal and gas. I don't know if that's a surprise to some people when they arrive, possibly, which we need to research more about. And we also have people there with, we've got petitions, we do direct action outside our members' offices and things like that. So we're not just swapping, we're doing all sorts of other things and trying to build a community that can be more involved and open involved in climate direct action. But I think one of the things in the last election campaign, what the climate movement did really well, was to centre the cost of living and realising that we can't bring people along with addressing climate issues and reducing fossil fuels use without addressing cost of living and the economic struggles that people are going through, like just the struggle to live, to afford to live, to clothe your children. Like it's a really full-on thing to be struggling right now, and loads of people are struggling. And I think that's what we need to do in building up from the community. And something like reuse and repair is really, really important in terms of mutual aid and addressing poverty and meeting people's direct needs. And it relates to housing. Housing came up earlier as well. Housing justice, energy justice, racial justice, First Nations justice. And I think one of the things that in terms of climate politics that we can do is be building and learning across different movements right now. There's a lot going on across society. And just really thinking about it being in solidarity with the movement for First Nations sovereignty. There's a National Day of Action this Saturday, and First Nations groups are calling on us to be there, to stand with them in solidarity. And this is what climate justice means. We need to be there. And yeah, looking across it, there hasn't been big mobilizations for climate for a while. There's been big mobilizations for Palestine, and lots of climate activists have shifted their energies into that space. And the question that the climate movement is like, why, how, what are we doing to be working together to build bridges across these different movements? It's really, really important. And people are talking about this in the space of our swap. They're talking about, we've got babies and life and death. And, actually, we're talking a lot about emissions, household emissions, but making the connections. I think it's all about the connections and joining the dots with military emissions and things like that. So we've got these really important conversations to have, and they're uncomfortable and they're hard to be talking about it in lots of different contexts, but we have to do it. And we're doing it at the swap and try to do it here in this space as well, just to be really thinking how we build solidarity across those movements. We need solidarity in sustainability to make it better.
Fantastic. Thank you. Rob?
So again, I'll probably just give two tangible things I'd like to see kind of change and that needs political will. And the first one is the waste levy. So it's basically a tax paid on every ton of waste put to landfill. State government generate over $800 million of revenue through that. The idea is you make disposal more expensive, so recycling, reuse and repair are more attractive, and they have a pool of money to invest back into those networks. Now they've, over time reduced significantly the reinvestment, and it's down at less than 6% by some estimates now of that waste levy going back to support it. And I think a lot of the discussion earlier was around the need for funding and resources to help boost and create this as a sustainable economy. And you've got the funding source there. We just need the political will to change. And it's something that I know local governments have been advocating for at least a decade, if not longer. And we're still going backwards in that return of funding. And from Blue Mountain specific perspective, we're paying $2.5 million a year to the state government. We get none of them back. Imagine if you could invest that back into reuse and repair and building those community connections. That's a massive impact. And I think the other one that needs to change from a local government perspective is the way we fund waste services is through the domestic waste management charge. It's very much tied to the collection of household waste. So we can't move up that waste hierarchy. We can't invest in repair. We can't invest in reuse because it doesn't involve collection of household waste. They need to change that definition so we can tackle the whole market, not just the kind of failed bit of the market.
Fantastic. Thank you. So we've learned that Empire has a carbon footprint and that we've got the money could be not the issue, actually. It's really around how it gets dispersed. We could have fully funded repair centers and reuse centers. Why not? Okay. Question 4. What are the next steps? How can reuse and repair be recognized as measurable climate justice? So we're done with the batting order. So whoever has a burning desire can speak first.
Got it.
I've got the mic. No, short straw there. Look, I think the next steps are just trying. We have to have a little bit of an attitude of not being afraid to fail, and we're certainly taking that at Blue Mountains Council. We're not going to, frivolously get rid of money, but also we are willing to try things and see if they work, and if they don't, readjust, reframe, try again. And I guess the measurable part, I've thought about this and really struggled to get an answer because you can measure the output part, so the waste diverted. But if I take the Blue Mountain Sustainability Festival as an example, it started last year. Off the back of it, we now have a monthly market that's going on. We have 3 new kind of secondhand and vintage shops that have opened up in Katoomba. How do you capture that? How do you capture just the behavioral change? And if people see, a sustainability festival, they see some workshops on repair, they see some reusable cups, eventually their mindset changes and they start valuing items. And I just don't know how you capture all those outcomes. And I think, another one is how we frame it. I know Aaron is at markets trying different messaging, and actually sometimes the climate message doesn't work because it's so politicized. People are dug in their trench and they're not changing. But if you talk about reducing resource consumption, it's maybe more effective. So it's having different avenues. And I'll stop and pass over to
Yeah, I can riff off of that, I think. Thinking about valuing and measuring the community infrastructures and all the other webs of relations that come off of any initiative. Like, they're so generative. Like, the swap was part of the Blue Mountain Sustainability Festival. It was part of the toy swap that Jackie Lowe is organising across Sydney. And there's all these different opportunities, really. And it's about, just acknowledging that the measuring the actual what you've captured and done is really, really effective, but also those, the often invisible organising work that goes on behind the scenes to make it all happen. And it tends to be quite a few of the same people that take on that work as well. So there needs to be some support and recognition for the unpaid labour that goes into a lot of these different activities and keeps them going. We need more funding. Need to spend that millions of dollars to see what we can really do to advance what we're trying to do in the reuse, repair, resource exchange spaces. But I think, yeah, it's really about, I'm looking forward to hearing from Nina this afternoon, Nina Gbo's talk about what we can do at that systems change industry level with fast fashion and stuff like that, because we're doing all of this work on the ground, and then you've got these big billionaire hitters that are just making loads of profit off of everything and no accountability and responsibility to what the waste is that's being created. So we need that sort of political push and the community influence as well to get behind some change. The community organising it's not everything. There's the political sphere as well that people are doing work within to change things. But yeah, the community pressure is really, really important, and I think that's something that we can also capture through our initiatives as well.
Look, echoing all these comments, I think the only thing I'd add is just the journey that I've come on personally is coming to understand that there isn't some kind of binary between individual action and systems change. And I got force-fed that as a youngster, trying to be like a brave activist and climbing all the rigs and driving boats and, getting in the way of things. Actually, we've got to meet people where they are. If cost of living is the number one issue in front of mind, let's start there. Start with a conversation that's actually going to build interconnectedness through individual concerns. And that has enormous power. We are starting to lose count of how many MPs have found out about this and are asking us, can you do this in my electorate? Because they can see that they're bringing people together in a diversity and in a size and at a scale that otherwise they can't manufacture. And so this has power. So I think that's the connection we need to make, is that the individual action is power that can be used for change.
That was a great way to end things, I think. Actually, you guys have been so disciplined that I still have 2 minutes left on my shot clock before we move to Q&A. But that was such a beautiful statement about really repairing the world, one relationship at a time and one thing at a time. Yeah, and how that scales out, how that has magnitude. All righty, friends. The way we're going to run Q&A is we've got some people online, and we've already got questions from the online people, but I thought I might start with the in real life people. So does anybody have a question for our panelists? Yes, there's lots of them. Helen, please. Yeah, we got a roving mic yet, I think.
Hello, my name's Helen, and I just have a point to make. I think what we could do is scare the hell out of the community to make them realise that if we don't do things sustainably, we're all in trouble in the future, and so are our children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, etc. And we know that Australia is world famous for their great ads, AIDS prevention ads and the anti-smoking ads. You go to Europe or the US today, or come from those countries to Australia, and they say, no one in Australia smokes anymore. And it's because we've scared them. So we need to scare people. It works. We've proven it. That's my point.
Thank you so much.
Okay. And would any of the panelists like to respond to that? I'm just going to vape for a second. No, just kidding.
There's a lot of power in that. Some models of influence understand that pleasure and pain are your kind of two levers, and I think that fear does motivate, but it can often be it can often have single action bias. It can often have just trying to put out of sight, out of mind. The one thing I just wanted to flag off the back of that is that there is a moment happening this week. So I reckon in about 48 hours we'll hear the National Climate Risk Assessment, which is a report the government's been sitting on for years, trying to hold back until it's as convenient as they can make it. And it will be hard reading. It'll be tough reading. That report's going to contain regionalised assessments of the risk and the threat of certain scenarios for decades to come for towns and communities and cities in Australia. And that's not a conversation, I think, for us to say, told you so, but a conversation for us to say, what are we going to do about it? Because if we empower people through those moments and say the future is ours, it's ours to make, it's ours by design, that's where I think we can have those preparation conversations and get the fear turning into something that's more hopeful, which as a parent with young kids, that's at the end of the day essential. And yes, some people it will work on some for sure. That's their absolute motive. But if it worked on everyone, we'd have won by now. So I think we've got to bring it back to what's the power, what's the value, what's the hope.
There's another question right here.
Oh, we're going to another question. Look. George, mine?
Praying on 6 months, 12 months, and I only need things to third amount of time. I'm wondering if I will come across anything that is focused on the people who are only going to be you short term who need things, but be given or when those things and then those things being passed on. Is that something that you've come across?
I was just thinking about the WSU clothes and resources swap that we... Yeah, because we had a lot of students that come in and we've had a lot of reflections from students about, you know, like we can help, we've got spaces and we've got people to gather and do a system where people can actually benefit. So you're not having to go and buy everything new all of the time, different kinds of communities. I mean, I think that's something that I wanted to mention actually is just around a place-based approach to organising in communities and doing swaps, like look at what people actually need and then start there. Yeah, right. And just, yeah, within university communities, we've got a really key opportunity to be doing way more around supporting people directly.
The out of international students that but the 12 months to learn English, make money and they got is there anything around that?
There's lots of community orgs, I think. I mean, it's about making those partnerships, isn't it, really, and looking at like the community groups that are doing that grassroots work. One of the organisations that comes to mind is Community Care Kitchen in Western Sydney, and they're doing really amazing work with people who have just recently arrived. They're actually supporting Palestinian families from Gaza. People who don't get government support, you know, they're doing that really important mutual aid work. And I think one of the things that I've been thinking about more is with the swap, you know, it's this free exchange of resources and stuff. And actually there are some people participating that we could say, oh, you know, like I've been thinking more about how we fundraise through this as well. We need to fundraise to help people with mutual aid, with people who need money as well. So yeah, there's a lot there, and it's about working with the communities that are on the ground. Again, it's the communities on the ground, the organisations.
I'm just going to exercise the chair's prerogative here for a second. Unless, Rob, did you have some? Okay. So I was just going to say, we have people online who also have questions. So in the spirit of Australian spirit of equity and fairness, let's get a couple of online questions.
Radio, hang on. Badra will read those out.
There is a question from Bridget. Blue Mountains has a tool library in Katoomba. How does council support this initiative?
Unfortunately, the tool library is no more, so I think it closed down a couple of years ago. It is something that we're actively exploring as part of our circular economy hub. So we've done the feasibility study for a full hub that includes a tool library, and we're looking now at kind of going through that proposal and business case and trying to get that through council, and also looking at how we can leverage our library system to support that. So we do have, you know, home deliveries of books through our libraries, and storage. We've already got a cataloging system and a lease system. So we are kind of looking in that space and hoping to have, you know, good news in the next little while. But yeah, unfortunately that one did shut down. And again, it does come back down to it is challenging as a council to support and provide funding in this space.
Yeah, thank you. Bridget got another question. What do you think are the barriers to engagement with reusable nappies?
I've just done some research around this and just trying to get that published with mothers. They're all mothers that are leading social media, closed Facebook groups that provide support. There's so many barriers because of society and that it's just all set up to have no time to care, and we need more time to care. So that's one of the barriers. And another barrier is that they are a new iteration in a disposable society, and we need to upskill the community. Often you might be asking grandparents for support around an issue, and my mum looks at the modern cloth nappy and goes, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how to do this. So yeah, there's communities coming together to support people. Councils are doing workshops. There's also a lot going on around rebates. One of the things from the research that I've been doing with the community leaders around modern cloth nappies is they're trying to resist any stigmatizing narratives. If you fail and you try again, failure is okay. We can help, we can troubleshoot together. It's like a knowledge commons. We were talking about that with Emma Power the other week, and it's really stuck with me how we're commoning knowledge around cloth nappies to support people. So you need that community support, and real-time advice on Facebook's really helpful for that when you've got a leak or anything that's going on. And this pragmatic approach of you don't have to do it all the time. You could do it part-time. You could just try a few cloth nappies, and that's what we were doing on Saturday, actually, talking to people. Just start and see where you go, and it's okay to experiment and explore and use both, basically. Just see what you can do to survive those early years of nappying and infant hygiene. There's lots to say about infant hygiene. I'll stop now. Lots more to say. I'll put it on the Padlet.
Good.
Mind just adding a little bit there. I think another barrier, which you've kind of touched on, is cost. It is expensive upfront if you want to go out and buy 25 nappies to set yourself up versus just buying a pack every week or so. And I think rebates potentially are not super effective. They're very middle class kind of subsidy. You've still got to have the other 75% of the money to be able to go out and buy it. But something like a nappy library where it's freely available, I think that would be a really good solution, but not necessarily easy to set up. I have seen them done in the UK and been involved in them over there. But yeah, interesting.
You guys nailed it. Don't forget dads. They absolutely need to skill up on this. And big plug for Nappy Lane, who are like a group that do rental swaps and so on for nappies in Australia. And if it wasn't for that first workshop in the Inner West Council when I was a scared dad, I wouldn't have known what I was doing. So you learn the skills, you learn how to use a washing machine properly, and it can work. It's really easy. And God, we saved so much money. It's not funny.
Fantastic. My nappy changing days are behind me. Yes, sir, in the back, please.
Thank you, panelists. I'm a student at RMIT University.
Get a mic
Abdullah.
for the recording.
Okay, thank you again. I'm an RMIT PhD candidate who is trying to measure the attitude behavior gap for Australian consumers' choice towards using second-hand clothing as a pathway to sustainable consumption. So that's part of the question 4 that I'm trying to address. Now going back to what I really am struggling with, and I need the panelists' help for this, as well as the community here and beyond. Well, in the quantitative study, to make it really credible and worthwhile, I need numbers. And I'm struggling to get people to commit to 15 minutes of their time on a laptop to complete a survey. It's a simple survey where you go from strongly agree to disagree. So my only, I would say, request, and I would ask you a question is, how could I do that? And how could you help me in doing that? Because that's all about collaboration, which we were talking, grassroots researcher, council members, community, all together here. Kindly help me. Thank you so much.
doesn't need a response, I guess. But like, look, all I'd say is I'm really glad you raised the Facebook group stuff. Like finding those really passionate groups, whether it's parents or otherwise, will be your advocates. I think the discovery that, Parents for Climate made before I joined was that there's already a social fabric of people who care about this greatly. Just some of them are really isolated. They don't know each other necessarily, or maybe they don't know how strongly felt some of these things are. So just tapping into that, I think the people in this room are the right place to start for your purposes.
Well, I was just going to add as well, like, yeah, we've got really good social media networks, like, so we can definitely share research projects around. And it's good it's a 15-minute survey, because if it's 20 or 25, it's even harder to get people to complete it. But I was just going to add, my approach to doing research now is really grounded in the communities. It takes a bit harder to get through ethics, but then, yeah, like the research that we're doing around the swaps, for example, we can be in the swap space where there's 87 families to ask them to participate in a survey and use the Parents for Climate network. So to really be partnering at the research design stage, I think we need to be at that point really, and so that it's, from the beginning, partnering from the beginning, and then the research is more embedded in a particular community.
So just jumping in, our people on the chat have asked us to share your link so that they can have a look. So I'll come over with a piece of paper, we'll write down the link, put it in the chat, and
Shall we see?
we've got another question in the room from Kerry, is it?
Hi, I often experience that politicians make a lot of promises before elections, but often fail to deliver and go silent. Believe it, yeah. And I think, given the energy of this room and AI, I think we should be tabling what politicians promise in different agendas and use artificial intelligence or someone else's intelligence to create a website where you can actually click on and see what they've promised and whether they delivered. I first heard about AI at the council, local council. A gentleman was a guest speaker there, and he told me he was actually banned from going to Russia. And I said, wouldn't it be good if you had AI, as for example, as part of a council meeting, to feed their decisions through your regular meetings to see what AI thought about the facts, the data, removed anyone else's agenda. And I really would see if I could click on a button and say, Rob, what did you promise, or what's your values about climate and your community? Because I find sometimes, you may not believe this, politicians pick and choose what is the most political advantage for them to get involved with. I actually wrote to the federal government and asked them the criteria used, but I never got a response from there. But yeah, this is a serious suggestion. I would love a website where you could go and click on someone and see what their performance was, about what they delivered, what they promised, and what things were asked, not just what they want to give you. Thank you.
Okay, so a question about AI and accountability and governance.
Interesting. You're hitting all my favorite topics here. But look, I agree with all your points. Check out They Vote For You, really great website which actually tracks how each candidate, particularly federal, is voting and what their record is on every issue. Absolutely right about the system of power in that, like, everything is politics. Everything is politics. I count on it. I count on the fact that politicians are going to make lots of promises ahead of an election because I will leverage that as power over them. We got 412 candidate pledges to our solar and batteries for homes and schools promise. And that's something that we're still holding over the 68 that are now elected. And we'll use that all the way. So I think use that as much as you can. Use it to your advantage, but don't ever expect a politician to do anything that's not in their self-interest. That's the system we're using. Use that as leverage. Unfortunately, we can't switch that off or replace it. Well, yes, you can find yourself blocked and banned from events and things like that. So you know you have to use your influence tactically. But I strongly encourage it. The thing about AI though, just quickly, it's coming up real fast. It's going to make a really big difference, and I think there'll be a lot of like product design that will lock out a lot of human intervention. There'll be a lot of not just narrow AI, but general AI that will potentially be affecting the way that consumers think and feel when they see content. And it will be very powerful. And this is going to be a bit of a tidal wave that might be quite hard to get around. The only thing AI can't do is build human relationships. And that's the thing that we have. It's our superpower. And it's what is giving me hope. It's what's actually building power at a rate of knots that other, long-standing climate and environment groups haven't been able to maintain that scalability. So just really echoing AI as a tool, let's use it. But let's also remember that fabric we have by getting to know each other and helping each other is... That's right. Yeah, AI is a tool, but it's also it's going to be used by those who have the greatest advantage in money.
Got 4 minutes left. Anyone else want to respond to that question, or should we move on to another one? Just don't ask Grok. That's my advice to you. Why don't we go back online? Oh, sorry. Why don't we collect one from online, and then whoever's got a burning desire and he has at least 2 people. Okay, go ahead. Riley, please.
Sorry, I'll try and be very quick. So as we kind of transition your initiatives from grassroots programs more to institutional levels, how do we manage that scaling process to make sure that the community impacts that you guys make, because a lot of it would be like the relational trust that you guys build, how do we manage that within the scaling process to bigger and better things?
I'm just going to bring it back to climate justice as a framework and a set of principles that you can use to guide your organising, and to be thinking about when you're trying to scale and sustain something. It can morph into something that doesn't reflect what you started with. And some of the things that I've been engaging in is around what does anti-racist, anti-colonial organising look like? How do we shift our movement from being quite white and middle class? How do we amplify marginalised voices in a way that's not tokenistic, and that's actually, we're being led and guided by First Nations people? Like, how do we actually do that? And I think that's really, really important. And that's why climate justice as a framework is part of this event, like just to be holding onto that and to making a commitment as a white settler on stolen land. And just aware of the global harm and violence that's been going on, and my complicity in that because of the different organisations and institutions that are playing that part and not practicing principles of equity and justice. It might be there in a mission statement, but it's not actually there in practice, and people are seeing this, and more people are waking up to that. So I think one of the things that's really important in the work that we've been doing on the ground, is really thinking about the principles that underpin the practice and making sure they're justice and equity focused, genuinely justice and equity focused. And it's really hard to organise like that. Well, you can't move fast. You've got to be really caring and careful with what you're doing.
If it helps, there are quite a few levers you can pull on, say, corporate, affecting pressure on corporates from a community level. And I think that's a really important part of that as well, like understanding that our mindsets will affect how we perceive and see and measure the integrity of different brands, their marketing approaches, and so on. And I think ultimately having things like right to repair established as a norm, or having things like the duration expectations, built-in obsolescence becoming a sin rather than norm. These things would all be really useful mindsets to create, and then ultimately making sure that we're getting really high integrity marketing in the first place. We're really proud to take a court case against Energy Australia for greenwashing, which ultimately we were able to get them to capitulate in full. And I think that just demonstrates that, they'll do anything to avoid a court judgment because no one wants to be against parents. And so if we can organize communities like that and say no one wants to be against the community, I think corporates will move faster than you think.
The Australian Earth Law Alliance might be another group to rope into this conversation at some point. I think we've got time for... No, we're out of time. And we've left sorry to continue with this baseball analogy. We've left a lot of runners stranded. There's 16 questions on the chat. We'll save that. Should I, next slide? Yes. Networking and swapping. Can we go backwards to the Padlet? Yes. So we have a plan, and the plan is that we've got this QR code. We want to hear these questions. This was a thought leadership event organized around Jenna Condie's work, and as you can see, she's really connecting research to meaningful change by building relationships. That includes everybody in this room and everyone online. All are welcome, right?
Yep.
All are welcome. There we go. So we might just draw things to a close for now, at least with this session. Then we got lunch, mostly vegan, and then a keynote from our friend Nina Gabor. So thank you all. And swapping. That's right. We're going to practice what we preach. So thank you all for coming. Thanks for those of you who are online. Thanks to the library for all their logistics, support, care, and ongoing presence. Fantastic.